But Lee Mendelson said sure, figuring he would have several weeks to work up an idea.
And they said, could you please have an outline to us by next Monday? I said, absolutely, no problem. So I called Charles Schultz on the phone, and I said, I think I just sold a Charlie Brown Christmas. And he said, what in the world is that? And I said, well, it's something you're going to write tomorrow.
Now look, if we're ever to get this play off the ground, we've got to have some cooperation.
Bill Melendez, the animator, flew up to San Francisco, and Sparky, Mr. Schultz, and I, we all sat down and stared at each other for a few minutes, trying to think what in the world we were going to come up with for a Christmas story.
Sparky was an incredible, creative, not just a cartoonist, he was a storyteller.
And then we just started to put building blocks together.
And he just did these things. They came out of the woodwork. I don't know why, but I know in talking to him and working with him, sometimes I would just sit back and say, holy Toledo, this guy comes up with great ideas.
And that's how the whole show came together on a Thursday afternoon in Sebastopol, California. We sent the outline to Coca Cola, and they got it on Monday, and on Tuesday they called up and said, let's do it.
Coca Cola liked it and authorized the special. They then had 6 months to put together the Christmas special.
And we, of course, almost passed out.
Oh no, we're doomed.
Doing a Christmas special in 6 months is not humanly possible. It's one of those situations where you'd be thrilled that you got it done at all, let alone that it was any good.
So here you have three guys sitting in a room who had never done a television special before. A cartoonist who by then was world famous, an animator, and myself, a documentary filmmaker.
And on top of that, they had to basically invent Peanuts for television. The Peanuts characters really had never functioned in that environment before, and someone had to make all the decisions about how they interacted and how the music sounded and what the whole through line was that would make the show work for half an hour and keep people's attentions and be faithful to a newspaper strip.
When he drew the comic strip, Sparky wanted to be authentic in everything he did because he felt that that was a compliment to his readers.
And it's amazing that they invented it all that fast and they got the show on the air.
This is the music I selected for the Christmas play.
For the music, they decided to use a jazz soundtrack done by Vince Guaraldi.
And it was very adult-like and kid-like at the same time. So I gave Vince a call. He loved Peanuts. He'd read it, of course. He said, sure. So he started writing the music, and a few weeks later he called on the phone. He said, I got to play this song for you. I said, well, I'd like to hear it in person. He says, I got to play it before I forget it. And he played Linus and Lucy for the first time. And I knew, for whatever reason, that was going to have an enormous impact on the show. It was so right and so perfect.
Linus and Lucy has become uniquely identified with the world of Peanuts and has become one of the most familiar pieces of jazz music possibly ever produced. Another one of the best pieces of music from Charlie Brown Christmas is Christmas Time Is Here, which is the song that is played at the beginning when the gang is skating on the pond. Originally it was an instrumental piece composed by Vince Guaraldi, but Lee Mendelson thought that they needed to have a song to go in the special as well. And so he sat down and then just in 15 minutes wrote some lyrics and sent them off to be sung.
I ended up at the last minute writing words to Christmas Time Is Here because I couldn't find anybody else to do the lyrics.
One thing Peanuts fans talk about are the missing scenes from A Charlie Brown Christmas. In the very beginning of the show, after the gang has played Crack the Whip while skating, you'll notice that while Charlie Brown crashes into a tree and snow falls on him, we never see where Linus lands. This is because Linus actually, in the original broadcast, crashed into a Coca Cola sign, Coca Cola being the sponsor of the show originally.
Get the biggest aluminum tree you can find, Charlie Brown. Maybe paint it pink. Yeah, do something right for a change, Charlie Brown. One
of the unique aspects of A Charlie Brown Christmas is the voices. Instead of using adult actors to do kid voices, as was the standard practice, Schultz, Mendelson, and Melendez all decided that they should go out and get actual kids.
I hated the thought of hiring adults to pretend that they're children. If we're going to use children's voices, get kids. I stood on that very strongly.
All right, now, we're going to do this play, and we're going to do it right.
We wanted Charlie Brown to have kind of a very blah voice.
Good grief.
Which is very hard to, when you're an actor, to also be blah at the same time. And fortunately, we had a young man come in who could do it, Peter Robbins.
With the exception of Peter Robbins and Christopher Shea as Linus, they actually used non-professional voices.
After we picked all these kids, the 10 and 11-year-olds could pretty well do the lines without our help. But of course, we had to coach the 5 and 6-year-olds who played the younger kids, and literally feed them half a line at a time sometimes.
Please note the size and color of each item, and send as many as possible. If it seems too complicated, make it easy on yourself. Just send money.
Which is why there's kind of a sing-songy pacing to some of the voices in the show.
Attention, everyone! Here's our director!
Snoopy was actually voiced by the director, Bill Melendez. There had been some debate about how to give Snoopy a voice.
I came to a point where I needed Snoopy to make some sound, so I just filled in just to have the sounds.
And in the end they said, well, actually, Bill, that sounds pretty good. Let's have you do it.
Why hire somebody else to do it? It's already done. We'll use it. So that's the way it worked out.
Bill Melendez was brought in because Schultz had worked with him before doing advertisements for the Ford Falcon starring the Peanuts characters.
Sparky took a tremendous risk. His comic strip is a huge hit all over the world, and he was going to give up control of it. But now he hands it over to Bill, and although he trusted Bill, there was no way to know, but he took a chance.
And so I have to be very careful not to cross a line where I change what I have been given by that other artist. I try to be loyal to that guy or that person's design and creation.
Bill was really reverential towards Sparky's work. He didn't want to turn it into something that it wasn't.
I just had to adjust my whole thinking about, making this supposedly inanimate character drawings suddenly become animatable.
Melendez and his guys had to figure out how to draw like Schultz would if he'd been an animator with their kind of experience. And how did Charlie Brown walk with those odd feet of his? They had to even figure out how that hairline of his worked from profile to full face. It doesn't work that way. That little curly cue on his forehead doesn't connect with the drawing you see coming, the little hair coming out of his forehead when he turns profile. And they had to figure out how to reconcile those two things.
Bill knew what he could do. He could do things like that skating scene, like the dance scene. He knew how to make the comic strip pop up with animation.
So I didn't want to destroy that at all. I thought it was a very whimsical treatment about this magic of Christmas and everything.
Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about? Sure, Charlie Brown. I can tell you what Christmas is all about.
And everything was going along very smoothly, and all of a sudden Sparky said, we're going to have Linus read from the Bible.
I thought it was a very, dangerous place to go into, especially since I didn't know anything about it. And I didn't like to being involved.
And Bill and I looked at each other, and he said, oh, gee, we don't know if you can animate from the Bible. It's never been done before. And he said, well, if we don't do it, who will?
Lights, please.
Sparky was a little bit offended by people who said you should not put something as sacred as a Bible verse in such a crass thing as a comic strip, and that offended him. He didn't think a comic strip was crass, obviously. He was putting his whole heart and soul into it. But I also think that he probably felt that the Bible verses aren't just for church. They're not for the priesthood, they're for everyone.
And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them.
But the way it developed in the Charlie Brown Christmas, it was completely acceptable. As long as we did it on that level, it was great. That was my feeling.
Fear not, for behold, I bring you tidings of great joy.
Linus's speech was from the book of Luke, chapter 2, verses 8 to 14 of the King James Version of the Bible. It provides a much-needed antidote at that point to the commercialism and aggravation that Charlie Brown has been experiencing up to that point.
For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord.
So Linus is the philosophical one, and it's true, he is the only one who could have said, who would have had the innate wisdom to, first of all, know the verse, but also to know that that was the true meaning.
And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God.
It evokes the best qualities of the religious experience of Christmas.
Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men.
When Bill Melendez and I looked at the final cut of A Charlie Brown Christmas, we thought that we had ruined Charlie Brown.
What's the matter, Charlie Brown? Don't you think it's great? It's all wrong.
We didn't think it worked. We thought it was too slow. We didn't know what the network was going to think. And I took it back to New York, and the network really didn't like it.
The general reaction was one of some disappointment that it didn't really translate as well as we thought it would.
The networks were against it. It went against the conventional thinking at the time of what a children's special, what a Christmas special had to be.
There were specific negative comments about the music, the piano music, some of the voicing, which sounded kind of amateurish. And indeed, it was amateurish. A lot of them were kid actors.
Rats.
But it was a commitment, and the film was made.
And they said, well, it's in the TV guide logs, we got to put it on the air, but nice try, and we'll put it on once and that'll be it. So we figured it was over, it was done.
The show aired December 9, 1965.
And much to our pleasant surprise, it just was an enormous success.
Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown!
It was the second most watched show that week, bested only by Bonanza, which was a very popular show at that time.
In those days, there were only 3 networks. And so we got a 49% share of audience, meaning that half of the television sets were on that show that night.
49, 50 shares, 35 ratings are numbers that are they're just unimaginable today.
The one thing I would love to have seen is the faces on the CBS executives who didn't like the Charlie Brown Christmas the day they got the overnight Nielsen ratings, and they suddenly realized that they had just put on the air the highest rated Christmas special in the history of civilization.
I had some questions as to how it would translate, to television, but what did I know, compared to Charles Schulz.
The way they measure success in television is that they order more episodes. And I think it was like a week or two after the Charlie Brown Christmas aired that Lee Mendelsohn walked out with the next 15 years of his life planned out in terms of specials.
So much to our amazement, we got an Emmy nomination for A Charlie Brown Christmas.
I suddenly realized, good golly, I'm involved in something that's big.
And when they announced A Charlie Brown Christmas as the winner, the 3 of us were stunned. I mean, it's just a moment that you never forget. And Sparky said, Charlie Brown, never wins anything, so this was quite a surprise, so thank you very much. And then it won a Peabody Award after that. We had no idea that this was going to happen. I think we are all as overwhelmed today as we were back then, and that it keeps going on and keeps going on.
And it has been so popular, and its appeal so long-lasting that it is aired every year since it was first broadcast.
I think Charlie Brown Christmas may be the most rerun television show in the history of mankind.
It got to be something people looked forward to year after year after year.
So A Charlie Brown Christmas really has become the gold standard that every Christmas special is held to.
And so the reaction to it was, to me, amazing.
But you had here a genius in Mr. Schulz, one of the great geniuses of the 20th century in terms of entertainment. And it's as good today as it was 40 years ago. You don't have to look too far for the reason.